that I would venture to say, most Reform congregations do not do a second day of Chag, Rosh Hashanah, in the same way that they don't do 8 days of Passover, where they'll only do 7. And in most congregations, they don't do a second day Rosh Hashanah.
Shemini.
Or Shmini Atzeret, right, where we add another day of Sukkot. Any of the second days, we only do a single day in concert with what they do in the state of Israel, right? What they do in the state of Israel. But that's for another conversation. But here at Wilshire Boulevard Temple, we do a second day of Rosh Hashanah. And what do we read? What do we read as a congregation? We read creation. We read creation. No, on second day of Rosh Hashanah, we at Wilshire Boulevard Temple, we read creation. Genesis 1:1, and we bring it just a little bit into 2, mostly not, but it's all of 1, and we go to 2 into the first 3 lines. So if you're going to be following along in your commentary, you're welcome to do that, and that might be helpful for you if you wanted to add a couple of things. But I also made a source sheet that I will share with all of you. Yeah, so we're just going to jump right in with the creation story. Now, this is going to be interesting right from the beginning. It's a little bananas. Here we go. Where is the share screen? Here it is. And share. All right. So do you all see my source sheet that says RH Day 2? Is that a yes? Do we see it?
Yeah.
Good. Fabulous. Thank you. That's what I needed to hear.
Can you make it a little larger?
Can I make it a little larger? I probably could.
Under view options.
How's that?
Better. Now.
How's that look?
Through my cataracts, beautiful. And not the cataracts of Egypt either.
Oh, man. All right, let me just fix my screen over here so I can see all of you. Perfect. Okay. What was that?
I was going to say, before I forget, I want to thank you for helping my granddaughter with her bat mitzvah this summer.
Dude, all right, we could, because we could just talk about how phenomenal and wonderful she is. Because, all right, we'll do a little timeout. We're going to have to do a little timeout because this is definitely worth sharing. So, traditionally, right, bar mitzvah, becoming bar mitzvah. First of all, regardless of our ceremony status, we all become bar mitzvah at age 13, and in some traditions 12 for girls, right? And regardless of ceremony or not, you become a daughter or son of the commandments. However, we as a communal people, what's that, Nina?
You were muted there for a while, but you're okay now.
Okay, good. Sorry, everyone. But we being a communal people, we like to celebrate those liminal moments in our lives with communal gatherings, right? When the babies are born, getting people together, weddings, funerals, and bar mitzvah when being called to the Torah. And there's become a thing where, right, what does that actually mean? We have a discussion in the kind of like the academic circles of our movement. We have a discussion on whether or not 13 is the right age to have this ceremony, right? Is 13 the right age, or is 13 kind of archaic? Because really, are we ready to take on these responsibilities on our own without the help of our parents or guidance of our parents. And some say, well, maybe we should and that's kind of where in the Reform movement, where the idea of confirmation came into play around 15, 16. Like maybe you're much more of a sophisticated learner at 16 than you are at 13. Or maybe it should be a personal choice, right? And theoretically, that sounds good. But what we often see with kids, what happens if you give them a choice to go outside of or to be part of the mainstream or become something that's a little bit more esoteric, they're going to choose the mainstream every time. So they'll be like, I don't really want to do with that, the greater society from which I live. That doesn't happen. So what Gordon was referring to, so his granddaughter and I worked together this summer. She's a counselor. She was a counselor at Gindling Hilltop Camp, clap, clap, in concert with Camp Hess Kramer. And that's where I was this entire summer. Every summer for the last 21 years, I've been going up to camp, first alone and then with my family once meeting my wife and having children. And often, multiple times every summer, people will come up to me and say, Rabbi Eshel, I didn't have a bar mitzvah. And it's something that at the time wasn't really meaningful to me, but it's something that I was kind of hoping that I can do now. And we talk about, well, what does that really mean? Now, when we do the Ve'ahavta prayer, right? And you shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, all your mind, with all your soul, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children. It was this year and that line of the Ve'ahavta that really inspired her. Because now she was a counselor. She was no longer just a receiver of camp experience. Now she was supposed to be an active creator of camp experience, or to expand that idea, an active creator of Jewish tradition, passing on Jewish tradition to our younger generation. And this is the way she explained it to me on why she wanted to do this, to go through with this experience. And I was so proud of her because once that time passes, it's very easy to say, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. I could just let it go into the sunset. And B, what a fabulous role model she is for these other kids who may be feeling the same way that she was feeling. That when she was younger, she was just not in the headspace. It just wasn't for her. And decisions that were made as a family, she didn't do that. And what I see oftentimes than not, when those decisions are made at 13, not to become bar mitzvah, then it never happens, or very, very, very rarely. But it's places like camp when you're surrounded by all of these people and you understand that you're living Judaism, right? It's not just something that you drop your kids off and bring them home. It's something that you're living 24/7. She took it upon herself to say, I want to step in front of my community and take my rightful spot in the conversation. That is my tradition. And she wrote a beautiful Devar Torah, right, about the Parsha and about curses and blessings and how we get to choose what that means. It was one of my favorite moments of the summer, one of the most meaningful moments of the summer. And it really is living Judaism at its finest. So, Gordon, mazel tov to you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. And you should have seen all the kids and her friends were crying. The kids were cheering. Everybody was and she was so proud of herself. That was the best. The best part was how she felt about herself. It was amazing. It was amazing. Okay. Anyway, this is fabulous. This is really great. It's actually a really fabulous transition because, we read this Parsha coming up in just over 5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that. And it's my daughter's bat mitzvah coming up, and this is her Parsha when we actually read it, Bereshit. But let's just jump right in. All right, here we are, Rosh Hashanah. Why are we reading? Why do you think we read the story of creation on Rosh Hashanah? What you think? Why read the story of creation? Go ahead, Jeff.
Because creation was a new beginning. And for us as individuals facing God, Rosh Hashanah becomes a new beginning where we impart the communication to God of our hopes, our plans, our sins, our return into Teshuvah.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yes, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of New Year. It's that time again, that another opportunity to say, this year, oh, it's going to be different. I'm going to clean up my inbox, right? I'm going to get through those emails. I'm going to do these things. It's like another opportunity for the New Year's resolution. One of my favorite New Year's resolutions that I ever heard, my friend Jim, he says, this year, my New Year's resolution, keep up the good work. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Anyway, so yes, because it's new beginnings, because it's the head of the year, we're going to go back to the beginning of our story. But right from the beginning, check it out. Let's take a look at this translation. Now, this might not be a translation that you're used to seeing, right? Without looking at the translation, we look at the Breshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, right? A common translation that maybe you've heard is in the beginning, when God created heaven and earth, the earth being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep, and a wind from God sweeping over the water, versus this translation, when God began to create heaven and earth, the earth being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep and a wind from God sweeping over the water. So and so and so and so. Let me ask you this. What's the difference in the two translations? What is the difference? I'll give it to you again. Translation 1. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, the earth being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep and a wind from God sweeping over the water. Or when God began to create heaven and earth, the earth being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep and a wind from God sweeping over the water. What is the difference between those two translations? Jennifer.
My problem with both of them is God is eternal, infinite. There's no beginning, middle, or end. So I would just say, I would get rid of began in this one and in the beginning, as if there were something before God.
Okay. Well, check it out, Jennifer. Check it out. Here's, okay. Just your what? You muted yourself. You're muted, Jennifer.
Just my particular.
No, I love it because you're exactly right. But you're exactly right. And let me get to it in a second. Pnina, go. And then I'm going to get to your point, Jennifer.
I read something very interesting from Don Yitzhak Abarbanel, explanation. And according to his explanation, everything was actually created from the same matter, even human beings, everything, and Earth is connected, which I liked a lot, because now with the conservation and with climate change and all this stuff that goes on, the fact that he thought everything was created from the same matter, it's important to understand that when we handle one part, it will affect another part.
Well, this is fascinating.
All from the same matter. And
correct. That's like there's a song, "We are stardust," right? Where we are everything. Well, everything comes from the same supernal point, which is also a very mystical understanding of the Big Bang, is this supernal point where everything flows from this one specific point. But I want to get back to, hold on, thank you, Pnina, but I want to get back to Jennifer's beautiful point here. Hold on, check this out.
One more thing. Excuse me. No, lo chatata. Anyhow, so to give you one example is when the moon is full, there is the tide goes in and out, according to the moon. That's the way we explained it. So I think it's important to maybe look at examples to understand how it could be that we are all connected and with the earth and everything else. Okay, that's all.
Beautiful, thank you, fabulous. Hold on, Jeff, let's get to Jen's point. Jennifer, is it Jen or Jennifer? Which do you prefer?
Jen or Jennifer. Jen is fine. I love it. And Jennifer. So Jen is easier. And
You
shorter.
tell me. You tell
Jen.
me.
Jen.
Jen, it is. Okay, so
Forever.
in the beginning, so the first translation, in the beginning, that means like the beginning of everything, right? And it doesn't necessarily, the initial understanding, the initial translation give room for, Leolam Vaed, forever and ever. That God has no beginning, no end, and is a constant. But here, it's like when God began to create heaven and earth, right? The earth being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep and a wind from God sweeping over the water. That already says that maybe there was already other things when God began to create heaven and earth, but what else was there? God was already there. It's like we're jumping into the middle of a story. It's like we're jumping into the middle of a story, right? So Jennifer, Jen, that does give you, that gives credence to your point, right? Of this, well, God, if God was always there, that could say that because we're just jumping into the beginning. It says when God began to create the heaven and earth, that's not saying that that's everything, because we know that there's more than that. At least our understandings of heavens and earth, we know that there's a lot more than that out there. And God was doing other things. And then we jump into the story, the particular that has to do with us, when God was tinkering and fashioning over here, right? Because the earth being unformed and void with darkness over the surface of the deep and a wind from God sweeping over the water, meaning that all of that was there. Yes, dude. What? Come say hello. This is Eli. This is Eli, everybody.
Hi, Eli.
Hi, Eli.
Yay.
Okay.
Hi, Eli.
Sorry about that.
Thank God he looks like his mother.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
I don't even know her.
Yeah, well, no, so a quick tangent that's kind of somebody made a dark joke at my expense once, and I'll share it with you based on what, it's like I was taking my daughter and my son to school, and I was walking with them. Both of them are blonde hair, blue eyes. My daughter's a little greenish blue, but blonde hair, blue eyes. And I'm walking them out, and this guy in the parking lot says, "Rabbi, those your kids?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Man, if this was 1942, they'd be fine. You, not so much." You believe that?
Oh
Kindergarten
my
in second
gosh.
grade. My kids were in kindergarten in second grade. And they're like, "Abba, what was he talking about?" I was like, "I don't know. We're late for school.
Oh
Let's go."
my God.
Keep
Crazy.
walking.
Okay. Yeah, keep walking. Anyway, let's get back to business. Merle, go.
So when we were reading this, and then you said the Big Bang, I'm like thinking, how did God get all this stuff? And it took me years to understand Danny Matt and the Big Bang Theory. But
Okay,
I
bring
look
it.
at this and I see all this stuff floating all over the sky. And how did God know what to choose to create first?
So you're asking about order, specific
well, that's
order
part
of
of
things.
it. Is all this stuff is out there. God created these things in an order that God created in God's mind what to create first.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm reading this, I do think of the Big Bang Theory, because there's all this stuff floating around that somebody has to choose from.
Okay, interesting. Good. Brad, go.
How do you create
Sorry,
from that?
Merle.
You know,
No,
I
I just-
wonder.
Go, Brad.
I wonder if there isn't from the get-go a connection to the Passover story here with this idea of the absent God, who all of a sudden it starts to create heaven and earth. That absent God, who during the 400 years of slavery all of a sudden wakes up and seems to realize that our people are being brutalized.
Whoa.
Is there a connection there with this theme of the absent God?
This is interesting because I would argue, Brad, it's exactly the opposite.
Right.
In the story, in the Passover story. Exactly the opposite. What was the word that you used? Absent?
The absent God.
And then the absent God, and then you said all of a sudden God woke up, went, "Whoa, what's going on here, Fortune?" I believe it was absolutely the opposite. That was part of the plan the entire time. That was part of God even foreshadowed it to say, yeah, you guys are going to be there for a long time. Yeah, God, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart and all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, there's going to be this famine, and you're going to go down there. I'm going to make a famine in the land of Israel, and there's no way for you to exist there. I'm going to send you down to Egypt, and then you're all going to stay down there for a while, because only then will you appreciate what you have when I take you out. Right? So even here, it could be, well, here is a plan, right? It's like there is a specific order to things. That's what it goes. It goes to saying that the earth being unformed and void, tohu vavohu, or in other words, chaos. And then God starts to bring a plan out of the chaos. There's a plan out of the chaos, which we're going to get to. Good point, Brad. Pnina, go.
I think that the most important thing is that this is the first time, if you read the Torah, the acknowledgement that there is a God altogether, one that you cannot see, that's powerful and was creating all this that was given to us, with us included. This is the first time that people actually acknowledge the fact that there is an upper force or something that will control their actions, even, not only their being, and the whole world. And next to the people who worship idols, this is the first time that it was introduced as a God we cannot see, and you cannot, that he controls everything. And he's the one who is the God that you cannot see, and you cannot just make him from a piece of wood, or you cannot just sacrifice to him in order to this. It's something that it's out of your control. He controls you. He makes everything happen.
Great. All right, so check this out here. Now this is interesting, and I kind of had this little aha moment just preparing for today's class about this, especially here when it talks about, okay, God said, let there be light. Right? God said, let there be light, and there was light. Yeah. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. Okay, if God said, let there be light, that means, and then God separated the light from the darkness, that means that there was already darkness. Darkness was already there, right? As part of this tohu vavohu, as part of this void of unformed and everything like that, the deep and the wind and the over the water. But here's the question. Here's two questions. God said, let there be light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from darkness. What is this light? What is this light? And where is it coming from? What is this light? And where is it
unmuted? I don't know. It's up to you.
It doesn't get...
What's that, Miriam? Miriam, are you joining in? What are you doing over there? So what is this light? Right? What is this light? And it says, God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, a first day. However, let's just think about this. When there is light, or when they're here in this understanding, when there is day, or let's call it light, or when there is day, does that mean that there is no night or darkness? And do they flip-flop? Or are they there at the same time? Do they both exist at the same time? So there is no morning, night, where in one space it's morning, in one space it's night, or one space it's day, and the other space it's night. Or do they exist at the same time? Do they exist at the same time? Merle.
They exist at the same time because depending on where you live and what time zone.
But you're okay. You fell into the trap, Merle. You fell into the trap.
I'm sorry.
Because you are referring to something that at this point in the creation story does not exist.
True.
Here's the thing. Time as we know it, does not exist yet. Time as we know it does not exist yet. Gordon.
The sun.
So, okay, that's, yeah. So,
That was the
what-
difference.
so say that again.
The sun was the difference, and as the earth rotated around the sun, it developed night and day.
Yeah, but that doesn't exist yet. At this part of the story, that doesn't exist yet. Time doesn't exist yet. What we understand to be night and day is not the same thing, because we are all about, let's see. Oh, bye, Jen. Wonderful to see
everybody.
you. Wonderful to
Great
see
to
you.
Hi, Jen.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Because here's the thing, we'll get to it a little bit later. What we're referring to as the sun, that doesn't get created on our stories until the fourth day, which means our understanding of time, right, with the sun and the earth rotating around the sun and all those kind of things, does not exist yet. So we cannot put our understanding of time on this story. A day here, a night and day, and our understanding of night and day is not the same.
Aren't we assuming that sun came on the fourth day because just because it said light was good and God separated, does that say that there was sun?
No, it doesn't say there was sun. It says there was light. That, how earth-centric of us to say that the only light out in the world is the sun.
Got it.
How teeny tiny are we, Roy?
Is it, so I'm sort of making some haphazard guesses.
I love it.
Is it possible to understand this in more metaphoric terms, in terms of like understanding and not understanding? Because when God sees light, he comes to the awareness is that light is good. It's an opinion or an awareness. And so anyway, you can take that and run with it. But
that's beautiful. Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's maybe it's like haskalah, the enlightenment, where our eyes are open to something, where we can tell the difference between things. Yeah, that's very good. That maybe that's what the light is, right? The light is the light of our understanding, able to make a difference, to understand the difference between us and other things in the world, right? Check this out. All mammals, get ready for this. All mammals get goosebumps. All mammals get goosebumps, okay? But check this out. Humans get goosebumps in 3 different ways, but animals, other mammals, only get goosebumps in 2 ways. Cold and fear. Cold and fear. We also get goosebumps, cold and fear. But the third way, which is unique to humans, right, I think has to do with Roy's point. It's called awe and wonder. The wow. We get goosebumps because of the wow. Right? We get goosebumps because of that. So right after camp, right after camp, well, first of all, I did get goosebumps from Gordon's, the bat mitzvah of Gordon's granddaughter, for sure, 100%. I also just got goosebumps. I was just up in Sequoia National Park. So right after camp, I went with my family for a couple of days to get away from everything. I went from Idlewild to Sequoia, right? But my family, they didn't get to experience that like I did. And you're walking in these trees, right? That you know, some of these trees are like older than the Kotel, older than the Western Wall. And you're just, wow. And my son said, this was fascinating. We're walking in this one hike, and he said, wow, Abba, I feel so small. I feel so definitely a sermon in there. Definitely a sermon in there, right? But he says, Abba, I feel so small, because he was so overwhelmed by these magnificent trees. And it was like this wow thing, right? That's human. That is the enlightenment right there, to be able to understand or even be inspired by those kind of things. Pamela, go.
I was thinking, I mean, to me, light and dark are always metaphor for consciousness and awareness as opposed to ignorance and lack of awareness. So to me, before you have like days and all of these other physical things, sort of, it's almost like an acknowledgement of the unconscious becoming conscious. And before any of the other things, before your senses start to kick in, before any of these other human things and material things start to happen, you have to have consciousness first.
Yes. Oh, this is good. Keep going.
So to me, it's like, okay, the difference between being asleep and being awake. And then you bring in these other things in the outside world to sort of regulate those things, daytime and nighttime, and the other things with our senses. So that's what it means. It means like, okay, so first we have the creation of an awareness. First we have to become aware, and then if you sort of put that on like life things before we make any changes, before we begin anything, and if you then put it against, I'm sorry, I'm just totally ripping, but like with you putting it with Rosh Hashanah in the beginning and Yom Kippur, the first thing you have to do on Rosh Hashanah is become aware. And then with Yom Kippur, you say, okay, I spent these last 10 days becoming aware of where I can do better, where I did okay, but maybe I can do here, did wrong, whatever it was, right? And you make amends. And then you've got the material and the consciousness to then take action. And in the material world, in the real world, in the physical. So
yeah, then you got to get to work. You got to get to work. You got to take that,
the consciousness, and the awareness for,
and put it into action. That's beautiful. I love it, Pamela. Brad, go.
A good metaphors work if they're effective. They work on a metaphoric level, but they also work on a non-metaphoric level. So why, if you're looking at this at a non-metaphoric level, why is light normatively deemed to be good, but not darkness not deemed to be good? If you're looking at a non-metaphoric level, that's really puzzling that there would be a normative judgment placed on light and dark.
Oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. And you know what? It just inspired this idea. Okay. And maybe it goes back to Jen's point earlier. The difference was like, well, maybe there were things that were already there, that the dark was already there. So perhaps there is no judgment yet. It's not because it was an overt judgment anyway. It's not saying that the dark is bad. It's not saying that, it's just saying that the light is good. Right?
Yes.
And perhaps because God created the light, right, from the dark was already there. Could have been in another story. This dark, I made this dark. Dark's pretty good. Now I got this light. Oh, let me check this out. This is pretty good. Because then later on in the creation story, it says God looks back at everything that God created and said, oh, it's pretty good. This is very good. This is very good, right? But there is no direct mention of darkness is bad. Though you are correct, Brad, when we talk about this idea of, in the bigger picture of life and metaphors, that light is equated with good and dark is equated with bad. Though I do really like a dark room to sleep in. I get those darkeners. I like those. So there's nothing bad about that. But Brad, you make a fabulous point.
The beauty of the night.
The beauty of the night, for sure. I'm gonna go Jeff and then Pnina and then Pamela.
The concept in physics about the universe is that the universe is contained and is full of dark matter, and that the dark matter is the potential matter out of which everything else has been formed. So it translates from the words of our Portia into reality in our physical world. And the dark matter of the universe is vastly greater than what we can see. So either there's a tremendous potential for new things to come from dark matter as we go forward, or it will all start all over again as the universe contracts again.
Beautiful. Pnina and then Pamela.
Okay, so if you
Okay, settle in, everybody. Here we go.
okay, so the word erev, which is evening today in English, means mixed up, something that's mixed. So when the evening comes, it's still not totally dark, not totally light. It's in between.
Yes.
So it means that there is confusion there. What is this thing? It's in between. So, but then comes morning. Boker is to something that you prefer. Levaker something. Levaker, it's to prefer. If somebody is going to tell me, מה את רוצה? גלידה או מים? אני אבקר גלידה. Okay, I can prefer ice cream or water, but the word is to prefer. So once the morning came, it was preferred because they could see. So the fact that you are also mentioning, somebody mentioned the confusion, that's a good one too. Because when the time changes, when you don't really know whether it's evening or morning about to come or go away or seven, there is confusion there. So if somebody said there that things were confused and you need to have conscious, I agree. This is really, what is it that you prefer? So Vayehi Boker, there was a preference to this and the beginning of a second day. So it gives you the door to go ahead, to go into the next day. You preferred clarity, you preferred understanding, you prefer consciousness, the way somebody mentioned. So if you look at the grammar of the word, it can explain so many things.
I love it. Yeah. Okay.
So there we are. And we are now ready for the next day. We prefer
now we're going to Pamela before we're ready for the next day.
Okay.
That actually sort of fits in perfectly with what all fits in, I guess. But what I was thinking in terms of judging the dark and the lack of judgment, I think the metaphor of consciousness versus unconscious, or even if you look at like a child, right? You don't judge a child, a 6-month-old baby who's learning to crawl as negatively walk. They're just not there yet, right? So the awareness isn't there or the skill set isn't there. It's not bad. It's just what it is.
Like you said.
Yeah. So again, like this whole, and to go off of what Pnina was just saying, like the confusion or the mixed upness, when you first become aware of something, if we are learning something about ourselves or about something new, at least my learning process, there's always this time of how to integrate all that information, whether it's something about self-awareness or what we're learning today in a real concrete way. And then you learn it, you integrate it, you process it, and then you have morning and you have clarity. So I kind of think that this consciousness and then the assimilation of the consciousness then becomes your clarity for the next day. And okay, we're ready to go again. And what's our next learning mission? What are we going to accomplish next? That level. That's my thought. Anyway.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeff. And then we're going to move on.
The value in time is that we have breaks in time. And in our personalities, in our learning, in our interactions with people, the time frame is only effective when it's limited. Endless time frames usually don't yield solutions. They just compound the process and the problems that are subsequent. So that the breaks in time are necessary to more or less create integrity of the person, of the thoughts, of the actions, and give them some formal meaning and finality. So that time is an absolute necessity for human interaction. Because if we're lost in an endless loop, as you can see in many science fiction stories, you are totally lost to purpose. So time offers you the ability to set goals, create actions that have a purpose and a limited function. Because without a termination point, people are confused. People are
We need to
lost.
sleep.
COVID.
Well, COVID
So
is not a unique event. It's happened many times in history. So it will stop and we'll get on with things. But, the idea that we, are going to be free of these types of things is not a realistic expectation. We are not in control.
So, it's interesting. Well, we are not in control of time, but we are in control of how we use the time. We can be in control of how we use the time. And here's what I mean by that. This is actually, and Gordon, you can ask your granddaughter, what is my statement at the first tefillah, the first prayer service that we have at camp. And I say it every summer. For the older kids, it becomes a little bit like they like to repeat it. But for the younger kids, if they've only heard it like once or twice, they're like, what are you talking about? It's a 26-day session. I start the summer, the first tefillah, and I say, I have some really disappointing news. I have some terrible news. Terrible news, everybody. I have some good news, and I have some terrible news, bad news. Start with the bad news. What's the bad news? So I say that the bad news, it's first tefillah. Kids just got to camp, 26-day session, like 3 hours before. I say, terrible news. Camp is almost over. They're like, huh? What? We just got here. What do you mean camp is almost over? How camp we just got here? I said, yeah, camp's almost over. And I say to them, how many seconds in a minute? 60. How many minutes in a day or in an hour? 60. How many hours in a day? 24. How many days in a week? 7. How many days in a month? 30. So I was like, right there, time, but we are finished in 26 days. Our time is finite. You talk about wanting to be here all year long. Now you're here. Don't waste your time, right? Don't waste your time. So I say, what's the good news? The good news is it's not over yet, but there still is time. But it's how are you going to use the time, right? There's the beautiful play on words that we don't just count the days, but we have to make the days count, right? We don't just count the days, but we have to make the days count. And then what happens at the end of camp? The last Shabbat, I say to them, told you. See? Told you. They're like, oh, yeah. And then it just goes by like that. The camp just flew by. And did they really live up to their own expectations? Did they fulfill the things that they wanted to do? Did they try the new things? Did they meet the new people? Did they do all of those things? So, Jeff, you're absolutely right. I love that idea. Merle.
The minute the kids get in the car, or even before they get in the car, as they approach the car, they say, we're coming back next summer for, longer, if they went for 10 days or 14 days or whatever session they went for. And on the way home, they're already counting when they can come back to camp for that counting to start over again.
Yeah. And here's what happens though, every without fail, right? You could see the cycle of camp during like maybe the end of the second week, just the start of the third week. People are kind of lackadaisical. They're not really into stuff because they're like, oh, this is going to go on forever. It's only until they start reaching, it's the last Monday flag raising. It's the last day that they're like, they start to freak out, right? They start to freak out. Now it's sort of like this. Maybe you've heard this analogy before. How many of you have ever gone on vacation and written a postcard to somebody? You're on vacation and written a postcard, right? So you start writing the postcard and it's big and you got a lot of space and all of a sudden, and then as it starts getting towards the end, you start writing a little bit smaller. How many of you ever done this? But then, you got to flip it over and then you're just really trying to squeeze all that in it because you're like, oh, look I had all this extra space over here, but I didn't really think about it. What was I really going to write? But then I realized I have so much to write. And it's the same thing with our lives when we're young. Oh, we're invincible. We've got plenty of time. At the beginning of camp, we got plenty of time. Or even, these teenagers and 20-somethings. I got plenty of time. But But as our lives go on, you start being like, oh my goodness, I really don't have all this time and I need to start squeezing things in, and I start writing the small things and everything like that, right? That life is like a picture postcard, this metaphor of the finality of time. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Oh my goodness. I'm actually going to jump ahead. We're not going to look at because we kind of touched on it a little bit, that really our understanding of time doesn't get created until the fourth day, right? And this is the thing I love to talk to nursery school kids about or even elementary school, when they're like, well, what about the dinosaurs? What about the dinosaurs? Where are they? When did they live? What's this 7 day, 1 day, 3 days? Like, well, really, how do you tell time? You tell time based on the sun and the earth revolving around it. But in our story, that doesn't exist until the fourth day. So time is all relative, and what a day is and what night is and the existence of other things. It's like science and religion can actually live harmoniously like this, right? If we look at it as a way of understanding as opposed to the way of understanding. But I want to jump ahead to something that I find really interesting. Okay, so when God makes humans, there's three things I want to show us in the amount of time that we have. When God makes humans, and God said, let us make humans in our image, after our likeness, right? They shall rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle, the whole earth. God created humans in God's image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. God created them, that we are created in the image of God. What does that mean to be created in the image of God? What does that mean to be, Brad? What do you think? What does that mean to be created?
What I've read into this is that we are in the image of God, in that we ourselves are creators.
Ooh, I like it. Okay.
So
talk to us more about that.
Well, I mean, that is our life's. Those are our endeavors in life to create, whether it be to create a family or create work or create things. So it's always puzzled me to, if we are created in God's image in other ways, why is there evil, for example, in the world? So to me, it's more, it's a way to limit the understanding of the way that we resemble God by just saying we are creators, just like God is a creator, because we're dealing with creation here.
Fabulous. So, all right. So being created the image of something is not being the something itself. Like if I show you a picture of hummus, that is not hummus. It's just a picture of hummus. I can eat that piece of paper, right? Will it sustain me? No, not at all. Will it nourish me? No. Will it taste good? Absolutely not. But it was a picture of it. But it's like, all right, there is likeness. There are those possibilities. So now there's a difference. I think this is so fascinating, bro. I like this. So depending on how we act in the world determines the sharpness of that image, right? Depending on how we acted, like, okay, I created this sandwich. Then I am, that image of God is very blurry and distilled, and it's just, but if I'm creating a family, I'm creating an atmosphere, I'm creating a community, a place for people to be together and to live together and hold each other, take care of each other. I'm creating peace in the world, right? That's when we start using that idea that you said of being creators, but really sharpening and focusing that image, right? That's beautiful. I like that. Go, Merle. Thank you, Brad.
I was going to say, the picture is an image, and how we all individually look at the image is how we define what that image should be.
Say it again.
So we look at this picture and we determine from the picture how sharp or not sharp it might be, depending on what we have as an image of whatever that picture is, whether it's the hummus or a picture of you or a photograph of something. We determine how important it is to us and what that image means from that picture.
So there's a song that we sing at camp. It's called B'Tselem Elohim, the image of God. And the line goes like this: when I reach out to you and you to me, we become B'Tselem Elohim. We become in the image of God. So right there, it says like, when I reach out to you and you to me. So the image there is in potential and it's blurry, but once there is action in that creation, I'm creating this relationship between you and me and you. That's when we start to focus and living up to that potential of what being created in the image of God could mean. Roy, is that a hand? No. Pamela.
Well, the first thing that came to mind when we start talking about creator is then also destroyer.
Bring it.
And then I sort of went on to say, okay, well, why are they saying very specifically male and female? There's lots of places where we only talk about mankind, human, like the general or masculine, but this is, I don't know the Hebrew, but the very specific male and female. So it seems to me that we're creating duality. So we're creating masculine and feminine, light and dark, destruction and creation. Like we're creating a dualistic world. And whether that means it's a two-way street between human free will and God's fatalism or whatever it might be, like you're setting the template for duality for all of time.
Which is fascinating. Okay, because check this out. Let's go back to the language from before, because evening and morning is not binary, is not duality, right? Because day and night are, but here it says there was evening and there was morning, where evening is like a blending, right? It's like when the colors are changing in the sky. It's not dark, it's not light, right? And same with morning, as the sun is rising and whatnot. It's not day, it's not night. So there is that kind of mix, and it's not a duality, but it really is this kind of spectrum, if you will. But maybe this is kind of interesting. It's the only place where we see that. And when we says God created man, which his image is Adam, is really not man, it's human, right? Because ish v'isha, that's man and woman in the translation here, but Adam is human. And from Adam, right, is this amalgamation spectrum, human creation clay that there's then kind of pieces are taken out of to create ish v'isha, right? To create ish v'isha. Pina, real quick, because I have one more thing that I need to get to before we go.
I think the purpose is to show continuity. Zachar v'nekeva, it means that they are going to, and he blessed them and he said, Pru, be many. In other words, it's a sign for continuity. It wasn't a one-time thing that he created. He intended it to be continued and be.
Well, that's interesting, because that's right. The first commandment that we see in the Torah, not is continue. Be fruitful and multiply. Exactly. That is a commandment.
So it's a promise of continuity, and how we have to take care of this world, and this land that he gave us, and continue to create and improve on it. So it should be continued. That it should be there for us when we reproduce and bring in new generations. So it depends what we are going to do with this land when they show up, that new generation. What kind of world is going to be, what we are going to make of it, what we're going to continue to create. That's it.
So this is interesting. I'm going to finish on this point right here.
Okay.
Everything up there, we say it's good, good, good. And then we even have, when we finish doing this, wow, this was very good. But nowhere in the first 6 days, do you see my cursor over here moving around? You see that? Nowhere in the first 6 days do we see this word holy, kadosh, v'kadesh, kadosh. Nothing so far is considered holy. Nothing, not humans, nothing is considered holy. The first time we see that, wow, all right, I saw this and God declared it holy, right? It says that This is the heaven and the earth were finished and all their array. On the seventh day, God finished the work that God was doing, and God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day. We only say that God blessed anything else. God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done. This is the only thing in our tradition that is intrinsically holy, meaning holy unto itself. This is the only thing. Time, and specifically Shabbat, right? Time, Shabbat, the only thing that is holy unto itself. Everything else, the holiness is something that we, as Brad was talking about, this idea of we are creators, that we have to do. We have to live in a certain way to create that holiness, right? Like later on in our story, in the center of the Torah, where it says, Kiddushim tihiyu, be holy, because I, Adonai, your God, am holy. But you be holy means it's something that you have to do. It's an action. And you meaning the collective, not the individual. So that it's all connected and it's all a collective. All right.
That's the only word that's also not fully ever explained. What is holy?
What is holy? Well,
And
it goes, there is, well, we talked about Jeff, if you remember, there is that whole instruction that follows. Here's ways to be holy, right? But it's not really defining the word unto itself. Well done. All right, so I think I'm going to be back again next week. I think next week we're actually going to look at some of the Haftarot from the High Holy Days, rather than the parasha itself from the Torah. So that is going to be very fun and exciting. And I hope you come back and you join me next week. So with that, I'm going to say to everybody, Shabbat Shalom. Wonderful discussion, wonderful points, wonderful ideas.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom. Thank
Shabbat
you.
Shalom. And I'll see you all soon.
Shalom, thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Shabbat
Shabbat shalom.
Bye-bye, everybody.
shalom.